Today on Brian's Budget Garage, we're going to talk about changing the bolt pattern on an axle. Looked all over on how to maybe do this, come up with my own way. Hadn't seen it on YouTube, so I figured I'd go ahead and show you how I'm doing it. Sure, other people have different ways. This is the way it worked for me. So, this is the issue. These studs are at 5 and 4.5 inches. I need 5 at 5 inches. So what I needed to do is drill these holes here, which I will then put studs into later. So I need 5 on 5, and I'm drilling the actual axle, which, if you look, is, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch thick. So pretty thick. And I'll show you how I have it set up to do that. One way that I'm able to do this is I have these old lowrider wheels, which I'm actually going to be selling. Pretty nice, but I'm just not into lowrider look. So I took one of the universal center hubs out. There's the center part of it. And they're universal, so I'm going to use this universal center hub to bolt onto the old bolt pattern and then use it to drill the new bolt pattern. So here's the universal hub. If you look straight down on it, it is drilled for 3 different bolt patterns. This one right here is the 5 on 5. This is 475 and this is 4.5. Okay, so 5. So what I do is I bolt on the 4.5 one. Where did it go? There. This one right here goes on the actual studs and fits it. I then drill this one out right where it's at, and that should be a 5 on 5 bolt pattern that's centered based off of this hub. So if you can get one of these hubs, it makes it much easier to drill out your bolt pattern, because somebody's already done the engineering work for you. So this is after you've mounted it to the axle, and you put 2 nuts on here and over here. Though you make sure they're tight, because if you notice, the holes have a beveled edge, so when you tighten them up, it centers it around the holes and makes sure it's more accurate. The drill bit you use, you want to be exactly the exact round size of this round hole, so that it doesn't go off center. Okay. Now afterwards, I might have to round them up a little bit, because I'm going to get some new studs. And the studs might not require a slightly bigger hole, but that's okay, because the hole's already centered where it needs to be. So now I'm going to use my mill. I don't use my drill press, because it's rotating at 500 RPM, 500 and something, where this one rotates at 410? 430. So this is a little bit slower, and being a little slower, it's a little bit better when you're drilling thick steel. So you want the shavings to look something like this with curls. You don't want it to be like little bits. You want it to actually be cutting it the whole time. Otherwise you're going to dull your bit. So the other thing that this mill does well, it offsets the head, so I can actually drill straight down with this hanging out a little bit. So let me set it up, and then I'll show you how I actually drill it. So this is what it looks like when you set it up. So the drill bit's sitting right over the hole. I brace it a little bit with the slide there, mill slide. It's sitting on bricks and wood, which I know, a little precarious, and then I try to hold it while I'm drilling it, and it works pretty good because it's so heavy. I have to be a little careful though. So, and then of course I have a light up here to help show some light on it. So now we're going to go ahead and drill. Oh, the other thing that you want to have some kind of a cutting fluid. I have a thread cutting oil right here. Some kind of a cutting oil, the right cutting oil, because it's pretty thick steel, and you want to make sure it cuts fairly well. If you don't have the right cutting fluid, you will end up dulling your bit. So you want to make sure to have decent cutting fluid for this. First thing you got to do is put a little cutting fluid in the little hole where you're about to cut. And so I just put a little blob in there, so it's a nice amount of cutting fluid. Probably too much, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. So now you got to sit down in a nice spot where you can control things, because it's going to be trying to jump out of your hands, and you got to be real careful with this. Do this at your own risk, because there is a little bit of danger in this. A good seat, and by the way, don't forget your safety glasses. This is throwing steel around, so be careful. Even though it's a little slower RPM, it still is throwing steel. Alright, so one hand here, one hand there. Keep your hand away from the drill bit. Turn it on. And you're going to have to guide it in a little bit. Once it's guided in, make sure you're drilling the right one too. You don't want to drill the wrong ones, you want to drill the correct ones, no extra holes. Tries to jump on you sometimes. Put a decent amount of pressure on. Not a lot, but just the right amount for cutting. When it gets to the end, you get a little nervous. Tries to catch. One, and I'll show another one. This is how you set this drum up for cutting, for drilling those holes too. These holes are actually slightly smaller, so I'm actually drilling a little bit bigger, but that's okay because this drum has a very tight center hole. It's going to center around this hole, not the holes I make. So it'll be okay to be slightly bigger anyway. So again, we're going with using this adapter plate again. Wipe off all the old stuff so we can put it on smoothly with the new stuff. A lot of oil, whatever. Okay. So now the issue is you can't really center around. There's holes jumping there. Can't really center around some of these holes because the bolt, you have to have an exactly right size bolt, which I don't have, which you probably wouldn't have the exact right size bolt. So I start with putting two bolts, one on one side, one on the other, one on this side, and the other bolt on this side. But if you notice, it still moves around. So what we're going to have to do is we'll tighten these up first. Then I'm going to have, I've made some pins out of the 5/8 inch stock that I had, which will then center the hole. So it's a 5/8 inch, slightly over. I tapered the end, I bang them in, and then it centers both. Put two of these in, and it centers the hole. These actually hold it down. So this bolts hold it down. The pins center it. Now, the first thing you got to do is get the bolts tight, or fairly tight, at least hand tight. So we'll probably fast forward this part. I'm going to take these pins now and center. We'll bang them with a hammer to make them nice and tight, which will center the hole. So you center two of the holes and the rest of the holes are centered. Again, the bolts will hold this on. Pins actually center. Take a hammer. Tap them. Now look at the last hole and see if it's centered. Sure enough, it's centered. So everything's centered. Now I can tighten down these bolts in the right spot. When I tighten it, it'll keep it actually from moving. Doesn't have to be real tight, but just fairly tight so it won't move. Do the other one. There. About as tight as you need it. You don't need it real tight, just tight enough so it's not moving. And then you tap the pins one last time, make sure they're good and tight and not moving too. And voila, you're lined up. If you stick your finger in this hole, it's perfectly lined up. That means the rest of them are lined up too. So now we're going to go to the mill and drill these out. Now we're going to go ahead and drill it using the mill. Set it up here. Not nearly as dangerous. I move this thing, slide over so to keep the thing from jumping around too much. If something gets caught, it's just going to run into this slide, not go anywhere. So this is far easier and less dangerous than drilling the axle. Much easier. Still though, you want to use a little bit of cutting oil. I'm drilling a cast iron here. And get our glasses on, of course. Still need our goggles. And turn it on. It might jump, but it's not a big deal. It won't jump like the last one. I have to put a bar under here to keep it from trying to pivot while I drill. It's not too bad, just something to stabilize. Bit's getting dull. And the bit's getting dull. Having problems with my bit now. It's jamming and not really cutting anymore. Hopefully it has enough to get in here. There you go. At least when it gets jammed, it's not a big deal. Drill that hole. And then go to the next hole by pivoting the whole drum. And in 5 holes, we'll be finished. So in the end, this is what you want to see. You'll have 2 holes, 2 holes, 2 holes, 2 holes, 2 holes. One will be the old one will be the new one. So worked pretty good. So thanks for watching Brian's Budget Garage. Hope this might help you. This is a modification. Realize you're doing it at your own risk. If you have a lot of power, it will rip this apart. I'm putting it on a 50 Pontiac with 100 horsepower. Not a lot. So just be aware this is a modification, not sanctioned by the manufacturers of this product. So do it at your own risk. Thanks for watching.